Hey everyone, before we start, I wanted to remind you of the email list I recently launched, where I'm sending out emails talking about the practical day-to-day process of sitting down and writing. I'll be talking about getting through writer's block, staying consistent, different writing processes, rewriting, and more. When you sign up, don't forget to check your spam folder for a confirmation email. Hundreds have already signed up and are reading the emails, and I hope they can be a benefit to you as well. When you're writing a feature-length screenplay or a TV show, it can be easy to understand how you want your story to start and maybe where you want it to end. But it can be hard to figure out how to maintain a strong dramatic narrative for the long middle section of your story. Today I'm going to take a look at some ways that you can build your story around your midpoint to create a stronger dramatic narrative and give a bit of structure to the middle section of your story. Let's begin. A lot of writers think of their screenplay in 3 acts. The beginning of the story establishes the characters and starts the conflict. The middle of the story is where things progress and the character must face many different obstacles. And the end is where the climax is reached and the story resolves. This is a pretty standard understanding of stories. But what is actually supposed to happen during that middle section of the story? How do things progress? What kind of obstacles should the character be facing? Gustave Freitag was a German novelist and playwright. He also wrote a book called The Technique of the Drama, where he analyzed how great plays were created. Freitag found that many great plays revolved around a high point of drama that took place right in the middle of the story. He referred to this point as the climax. This is Freitag's pyramid. Here we see Freitag's understanding of how many great plays worked. The beginning of the story was called the exposition. Then rising action led us toward the climax in the middle. Then falling action led us away from the climax to the denouement, where the story was resolved. But doesn't the climax take place at the end of the story? Why does Freitag place the climax at the midpoint? Freitag's climax is not the resolution of the story. It is an extreme shift or turning point in the story. The character has now been faced with something that radically turns the story and throws them off their previous path. Let's look at some examples. In The Martian, Mark Watney is stranded on Mars after a bad storm separates him from his team. Watney focuses on survival and getting in contact with NASA. Right before the midpoint, things are going very well. Watney has established contact with NASA, and the people back at NASA have figured out a plan to get him home.
Yes!
Watney's crops are looking good, and he will have enough food to survive until he's rescued. However, at the midpoint, the airlock explodes and the crops die. The plan to keep Watney alive until rescue is no longer going to work. Everything has been completely derailed, leaving Mark and NASA to figure out an even crazier plan to save Mark. The denouement and the traditional climax of The Martian happens when Mark Watney is safely returned to the Harmons and then back to Earth. This moment resolves the conflict, while the midpoint created the largest moment of chaos that turned the story. In The Dark Knight, Batman must take on Gotham's newest threat, the Joker. Right before the midpoint, Batman is trying to restore justice to Gotham through taking down the mob and the Joker. Things have been grim, but Batman has been able to stay focused. At the midpoint, Joker is captured. While in The Martian, the midpoint is a massive defeat, in The Dark Knight, it is a false victory. Joker wanted to be caught. The Joker kills Rachel and breaks Lau out of prison. Batman has never been hit this hard before. Rachel's death causes Harvey to spiral into insanity, and Joker's escape allows him to continue to terrorize the city of Gotham. The denouement of The Dark Knight happens at the end of the film, where Batman and Gordon finally stop the Joker and Harvey Dent. In Little Miss Sunshine, the midpoint is different. Rather than the midpoint creating chaos, it creates temporary unity. In the beginning of the story, Olive gets a chance to compete in the Little Miss Sunshine beauty pageant, and the whole family heads to California. But they are in chaos. Richard and Cheryl are fighting after Richard has lost his book deal. Frank is suicidal. Dwayne still hates his entire family, and Olive fears that her father won't love her if she loses the competition.
Grandpa won't wake up.
At the midpoint, Grandpa dies. The story halts for a moment as the family take Grandpa's body to the hospital. But this tragedy unites the family. Richard takes control and decides that they are going to work together and make it to this beauty pageant no matter what. They load Grandpa's body into the van and keep driving. The denouement of Little Miss Sunshine happens when Olive performs at the beauty pageant, and the family becomes fully united. Think of Freitag's climax as the largest turning point in your story. Your character may go from actively pursuing something that seems clear and easy in the first half, to being thrown into complete chaos in the second half and forced to come up with a completely new strategy. These ideas also work when using Dan Harmon's story circle. If you've been following this channel, you will have heard me talk about Harmon's story circle. In the story circle, the midpoint usually takes place at numbers 5 and 6, where the protagonist gets what they want, or at least they think they do, and then they pay a heavy price for it. If we return to our past 3 examples, we see how their midpoints work with this idea. Right in the middle of The Martian, Watney has gotten what he wanted. He has food to last him long enough to be rescued. He has gained communication with NASA. And he has a clear path to getting home. However, Mark pays for this. The airlock tears apart, destroying his crops and making the rescue plan impossible. Now a new plan must be made. In the middle of The Dark Knight, Batman has gotten what he wanted. The Joker has been captured. It seems as though this threat to Gotham will be over as quickly as it begun. But Batman pays for this. Joker planned to be caught. The Joker kills Rachel and escapes, leaving Batman in chaos as he tries to protect Gotham and capture the Joker. Again, Little Miss Sunshine is different. Essentially, 5 and 6 are reversed. The family is struggling and torn apart. It is complete chaos. Then Grandpa dies. It's only after Grandpa dies that the family gets what they wanted. They band together and decide that they are going to get to the beauty pageant on time. Freitag and Harmon both place heavy emphasis on the midpoint of a story. They both see the midpoint as a high point of dramatic conflict that defines the first and second halves of the story. This isn't to discount the common idea of a climax taking place at the end of a story. It is still dramatically satisfying to have a high point of conflict right before your story resolves. What it does do is give a different view on how a story's conflict builds and changes in the middle of the story. Rather than a middle section dedicated to fun and games or further complications, something specific is happening. A major turning point is reached, which sends the characters in a completely new direction. Not all stories have to have a strong midpoint, but understanding this can help you maintain a high level of drama as you move through the tricky middle section of the story. So as you go to write, ask yourself these 2 questions. What does your character care about the most? How can you take that away at the midpoint to send your character careening into the second half of the story? Thanks for watching.